Smokes 2, a show about women who love cigars. I'm Monica.
And I'm Kara, and today we're super excited to have Christina Suarez here. She is a friend of ours, an associate through the companies, and just an all-around just super awesome and fun person who we haven't seen in far too long. So we're just really excited to be sitting here with you today, and thanks for coming in. And
yeah, welcome.
Thank you guys for having me. This is so exciting. I love, being a part of anything that has to do with women in our industry because, as we know, the cigar industry is a male-oriented industry, and the more women that come forward and just like speak about cigars and just love to smoke, I mean, I'm here for it, and I'm really happy to be part of it. So thank you for having me.
That's awesome. Thanks for coming. Is this your first time in the factory since it's been renovated?
I've been here actually once before. So my cousins, everybody was in town, and we hadn't been, and Bobby and Eric invited us for a tour. So like my mom, my aunt, all my cousins, we all came and we got like the full on tour.
Yeah.
And Eric really took his time with us, bless his heart. We were here for like 3 hours. It was great. It was a lot of fun.
That doesn't sound like the family.
No.
Yeah.
And then like seriously, Eric and then my mom, like together, it's like forget it. So we were talking a lot and just reminiscing a lot, and
much
it was
history there.
super. Yes, a lot of history. So it was wonderful.
I think that's one of my favorite things about when we have like sales meetings or things where the companies get together and you see the two families, because there's so much history, and they both families love sharing that history. So like somebody will give a speech, like say Carlito will give a speech, and then Eric will stand up because it will make him think of something that a story he loves, and then Cynthia, your mom, will stand up and give a speech, and then Bobby will be like, and I have something, and it just seems like we're listening to stories. We probably are listening to stories for like 3 hours, and they're just so happy to be like sharing these experiences with everybody.
I know. Well, think about it. Like my family, the Fuente family, has been in business for over 100 years. And I mean, similar to the, J.C. Newman, the Newman family has been in business forever. So it's like we have so much history and so much to share. And, we've been in our partnership, we've been in business for so long that I feel like the memories and the stories are endless. You know, like they're just going to go on and on and on. So yes, there's always a lot to share.
For those watching who don't know, Christina is Cynthia Fuente's daughter.
Yes, I am. If you know my mom and you look at me, I always hear, well, you're definitely Cynthia's daughter because I not only look like her, but I sound like her.
And personality.
Apparently. Oh, yes, that too.
You guys are,
that too.
You're her mini for sure.
So you're in the Fuente family, but I think what's interesting is that you've kind of taken a different path. I was telling Monica and Adria and I were talking earlier before you came in, and I was like, there's 3 things I think of when I think of Christina. I think about the cigars and the family business. I think about food and all kinds of great food. And then just like love, because you're probably one of the most romantic people I've ever met.
To a fault
you and your mom love, I believe is the quote. You just love love.
We just love love. I mean, we do. We do. It's true. I've had such a great example of love since a young age. My grandparents, God rest both of their souls, they were together for over 60 years. And they got together when they were 14 years old, and they were just such an amazing example of love, and for me, that it was just something that just kind of took me through life. And I just always wanted to have that type of love or something similar, because I feel like that love, like there's only one kind of love that they had, and as we get older and in this day and age, it's just different than the old school way of love, right? Like they were so dedicated to each other. And unfortunately nowadays, like, I hate to say it, but like divorce is so like accessible, and people just get divorced. They just go to that level so easily, like, oh, it's not working out, I'm out.
Right, that was
never even on the table with my grandparents and a lot of couples, in that generation. So for me, again, going back to the love thing, such a great example of love at a young age, and I've just always loved love. And my mom's the same way. But as far as food, I moved to New York City and I went to culinary school, and I always like loved food, and I always thought, growing up in a cigar family, that I would be in the cigar business. And it's still very much a part of my life. But when I graduated from college, I graduated with a business degree, thinking again that was my calling. That's what I was going to do. And then I started working for the family business, and as fulfilling as that was, and it still very much is, there was something missing, and I knew that I needed to pursue what I always thought was a hobby, my love for food. And I said, well, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right, and I'm going to move to New York City, and I'm just going to do the damn thing and just do it right, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just the best experience of my life. I mean, going to culinary school and being like a part of such an incredible industry in the heart of New York City, it's just, you can't beat that. And I've just been running with it ever since. And, you know, my family is always my top priority. So anytime my family, the business, anything that is needed from me, I'm always 100% in, because, you know, I am who I am today because of my family and the family business. So it's very much so a part of me. So I just basically try to divvy myself up and just, you know, but it keeps things interesting too. You know, it really does. So I'm blessed.
And now you're back in Tampa, right? You lived in New York City.
Yes.
And now you're back in Tampa. Are you still in the culinary world here
Yes,
in Tampa?
I am. So I actually started my own food media business. So while I was living in New York, I was working in restaurants, but I also was working, I did some work for Food Network, and I worked on The Chew for many years. It's on ABC for anybody who doesn't know, and or was. But that was such a great platform for me, because I realized, like, outside of there's life in the food industry outside of working in restaurants, which is an incredible thing. Like, to be a restaurant owner and to work in restaurants is really incredible, but it's very taxing, and it's a hard life.
Nights and weekends.
Very
and
much so.
grind.
Exactly. And, you know, I hate to say it, but, you know, a lot of my executive chefs were divorced and didn't have relationships with their children. And I just knew, like, at a young age that I loved the exposure, and it was great because I was, you know, not single. I was dating someone at the time, but I wasn't married, no children, so I was okay at that time. But I knew later down the road that was not the life that I wanted to be a part of, because my family has always been my top priority. So I knew that if I have a family of my own, that I would need to make sure that that was something that, you know, was always a priority. And unfortunately, in that world, the restaurant industry is just it's different, and you know, that, like, your life is sucked into the restaurant, you know, as it should be, because it is such a, you know, demanding, you know, workplace. So The Chew and Food Network introduced me to the world of food styling and recipe testing, recipe development, and, you know, working for TV and production, and that's something that I wanted to try to do here. So I did start my own food media business, and then I got introduced to Jeffrey and Margaret Zakarian. Jeffrey Zakarian is big on the Food Network. He's on Chopped and The Kitchen, and has a big presence on the Food Network. And we were introduced here in Tampa through a mutual colleague of ours. And we met, and, you know, it's just crazy because his wife comes from a family business here in Ybor City.
Oh, wow.
Okay, it's Kimmons. It's something in construction.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, I mean, literally right down the street, guys, right down the street. And so, you know, we got introduced, and her and I started talking, and, you know, the three of us started, you know, just to, like, you know, develop a rapport, and we realized we had so much in common, and, you know, both coming from long-standing family businesses, and both, you know, all of us in, you know, the world of food, and obviously, you know, family business, food, all of it correlates. So we've been working together ever since, and I'm like their culinary and production lead, and I do all of their basically just anything food and production related, I'm their gal.
Speaking of Food Network, have you ever thought about hosting? We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Like, Christina would be the most amazing
Oh,
Food Network host. And maybe even like
You could, and then she lights up a cigar at the end of the show.
a cigar and food pairing thing.
you know, from your lips to God's ears.
You would want to do
that.
something
Would be
like that.
amazing. Yes, I would eventually love to do something like that. I know, you know, I need to put my time in and get the exposure, you know, I need. And it's actually one of my New Year's resolutions is to start getting myself in front of the camera and just to, like, be more present in front of the camera, because you know, I feel like I am natural in front of the camera. I've grown up with a camera in my face all my life, not like paparazzi or anything like that, but like literally my mom.
Well, kind of.
But like my mom, always with a camera, a video camera or a camera in my face, always. You know, I mean, we have tons of pictures in our family, which I'm so grateful for now. But at the time, I was like, enough with the pictures. But again, growing up in front of a camera, I always felt, you know what, I feel like I'd be pretty natural. So it's something that I've definitely thought about many times. And hopefully, like I said, from your lips to God's ears, that, you know, that'll come one day.
So when we were chatting before we started rolling, you were about to tell us about potentially getting back into the family business someday.
You've always been open to moving to the
to it.
Dominican.
Yeah, you know, I've, again, always put my family and the family business at the forefront of everything I've ever done, because I wouldn't be who I am today without my family, the family business. I just wouldn't. And I say family business because it really does all correlate. You know, like so many of us are a part of the family business in some way. And for me, it's always been in the back of my mind that, now that my grandfather has passed, his legacy lives on, but he's no longer physically here. And, my uncle and my mom, they're only two people, like they can only do so much,
Right.
And like we always say G4, so generation 4, there's 7 of us, and we've talked about, how we can, because there's 7 of us, the dynamics are different. With my parents' generation, it was just my uncle and my mom, so just the 2 of them and my grandfather. But now there's 7 of us, so it's
Right.
like trying to find the balance of how we
Who's
can,
gonna do what?
who's going to do
and-
what,
yeah.
and at the end of the day, we all want to make sure that we get along and remain a family unit, because sometimes when business and family mixes, there can be there could be issues, like
Right.
straight up, like any family business.
Right.
So that's something that I've always thought in the back of my mind. I would never want our family business to put a rift in our generation.
Right.
So we had family meetings in May where we all kind of like dived into the nitty gritty, and we were all present for this meeting, for these days of meetings. And at the end of the day, where I leave it is, I'm open. I feel like I've been able to do both. I know I'm not full time with the family business, but I've always been a part of it in some way. Like I'll, go to the trade shows in Vegas, and, the big smokes in Vegas or Miami, like I'm very Fuente Mania when we, go to Philadelphia. Like it's very much still a part of my life, and I love being able to do those things. I just have to allot the time for it now because, I do have another career. But at the end of the day, and I've told my mom this, I've told my uncle this, I've told my cousins this, and my sister, who's, also part of our generation, that the family business comes 1st. And I just want to do whatever I need to do to make sure that we continue the legacy that my great-grandfather and my grandfather worked so hard to build. And of course, like my mom and my uncle. But, like I compare, sometimes I compare my grandfather's journey moving to the Dominican to my journey moving to New York. Like he had just built this home in West Tampa for him and my grandmother, and of course my mom, my uncle, and my Tío Ricky. And they had started this life, and then he knew that he needed to go to the Dominican to take the business to the next level. And leaving everything behind, my grandmother did not question it. She, of course, was probably at the beginning like, what? Where are we going? Where are we going?
What country?
But she never said, no, I'm not following you, because this is not a part of our, this is crazy. She was very supportive, and that's also part of like, the romance of the Fuentes story, that, my grandmother was always, by my grandfather's side through everything. And, it wasn't pretty at the beginning,
Yeah.
like it was rough. My mom, my dad, and my siblings and I, the 5 of us lived in one room, under mosquito nets. And my grandfather and so for me, again, going back to that following the dream, he followed his dream. In a way, he was following his dream, moved to the Dominican, knowing that he needed to do that in order to take the business to the next level and provide for the family. And, that's kind of like, I always compare, me deciding to move to New York, because I knew that was going to help me get to the next level. And so, he's been such an inspiration to me, just as much as my whole family has. And again, I would do anything for the family business just to continue the legacy that he worked so hard to build.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that that's incredible that you guys are having those conversations. And because you're having those conversations, I feel like you're setting yourself up to keep the business going and keep your family unit alive, because you're having very honest discussions. Like, these are my intentions, these are my expectations. We all acknowledge that we're trying to do what's best and how we feel, and
you're not waiting for issues to arise. You're
Right,
saying, like, let's
right.
get
Exactly.
everything on the table.
Right.
And
Which is so important to do in any
Yeah.
family business, and some conversations are going to be harder to have than others, but I just think at the end of the day, the best thing you can do to set up a family business for success, especially for the next generation, is to talk.
Yeah.
And just to like put it all out there so that everybody's on the same page, and we can just set ourselves up for, continued success.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that we're all having to your point, these conversations, because they're important.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's really smart. And I guess it's any relationship, right? Is just communication's the foundation for anything.
For sure.
So
Oh, believe me, I say that all the time. Like, and it's another comparison, like thinking of a relationship or marriage, how you take those vows on your marriage day, for better or for worse, and I always think about how my grandfather handled that. Like, he approached his relationships as far as within the industry with like suppliers, tobacco growers, etc., like for better or for worse. You know, you have a rough year, you know, it's a rough crop season.
I'm gonna stick with you.
But I'm gonna stick with you, and I'm gonna show you that we're a team, we're a family.
Right.
And you know, the next year you have a good crop, you're gonna remember me, and you're gonna think of me because I didn't leave you in the day. Exactly. So, you know, so similarly that my grandfather, you know, had that mentality in his marriage and also in his business, for better or for worse. Like, we're a team, we're a family, like we're gonna get through this, and we're gonna reach for success together, you know.
The Newmans are the same way with their suppliers and vendors and
Of
business
course,
relationships.
they're loyal.
Yeah.
Loyal.
They're loyal.
Loyalty
And
is huge in business.
even like at our level, we'll get, you know, cold calls from suppliers like, oh, we want to do this for you. It's like, well, we've been doing that with someone for the last 25 years. So unless you can offer something very different, like,
Of course.
Well,
sorry, but
Of course.
And that's probably why the two families have stayed together through so much, you know,
exactly.
because they both have the same values
Mhm.
and they both appreciate the same things.
I think that's what's actually kept the partnership so strong
Mhm.
and so alive all these years, is because we all stand on the same foundation, the same values,
Right.
you know, which makes a world of difference.
And they each have different strengths,
definitely,
you know.
for sure.
I think they
That's
really
for
like
sure.
play off.
In the best way, you
Yeah,
know.
no, definitely.
But we all know, like, my family and the Newman family, the dynamic, and it's just, you know, we can't help but laugh because we're all a bunch of crazies, but in the best way.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
but in different
the best
ways.
way.
Very
But
different
in
ways.
different ways,
Yeah.
exactly.
You guys are
I
definitely
love
different
it.
types of crazy.
Yeah.
but it works. It's like
But
it
it
works.
works.
The in-laws that are like very different, but like
Exactly.
somehow it works, you know.
100%. It
Yeah.
just, it works.
Mhm.
Yeah. We've been very blessed to have the relationship that we have with you guys.
So, did you wait till you were 18 to have your first cigar?
No, absolutely not. No, I was puffing on cigars. Not to say I was smoking like whole cigars or
Mhm.
anything,
Right.
but I was puffing on cigars with my grandfather and you know, my siblings at a young age.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't tell you the exact age, but definitely at a young age. You know, because we grew up in the Dominican. I was there for the first like 10 years of my life. We
Yeah.
moved there when I was 3. And I remember moving back, I was so upset because I felt like the Dominican was home, you know, because going there at such a young age, like
Right.
that does, you know, essentially become home because it's all you know,
Yeah,
right? Even though we would
before that.
exactly.
Mhm.
So for me, it was so hard to leave the Dominican, but whenever we were there, like we were of course in school, but we would spend like the weekends or even like Friday, you know, before they would close, we'd go and walk the factory with my grandfather, and you know, we just puff on a few, you know, nothing crazy, of
Yeah.
course, you know, but yeah, that was like so normal to me. And then on the weekends, going to the farm and, you know, in Bonao, and just being there, you know, in the tobacco fields and just watching my grandfather in his element, like that, those are memories that like I'm just so grateful for. And it really makes my upbringing so unique. Once I moved back, I realized how unique my upbringing was,
Yeah.
you know, because people were like, wait, you grew up doing what? And you grew up where? And you slept under what is a mosquito net? And I'm like, oh, it's a thing, trust me. You know, but it molded me to the, you know, to help create the person I am today, man. And I'm so grateful for, you know, those like rough times in our upbringing, because they really like molded us and like helped us not take anything that we do have as far as our blessings for granted.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the company has done well, and you know, we're so grateful for the blessings we have, but it's all coming from like trials, tribulations, and just like hard work and watching, you know, my family build the business. I mean, I feel so grateful for those times. But in answer to your question again, yeah, it was definitely before 18.
And you probably don't remember what it was that was your first cigar?
You know, because a lot of the times I was smoking stuff without a band on it.
Yeah, but do you
know,
remember?
like, or puffing on stuff without a band on it.
Yeah.
So I really don't remember. I want this to be so natural and organic, and I don't want to like, you know, BS you and tell you, oh, I remember the exact cigar, because I don't. Because
Right,
again,
just
like
little puffs here and there.
puffs here and there, and I remember my first, like my whole cigar. I again didn't have a band on it, so I'm not 100% sure what it was, because this was God so long ago. But I just remember thinking like, okay, this is something I can get used to. You know.
Do you remember when it was in your life that you started really enjoying smoking?
I would say probably more so my early 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember like being able to kind of enjoy this pastime with my grandfather. I was a little older, more mature. Not that early 20s is like, you know, looking back, because I'm 33 now, but looking back, I was so young, and like being able to like experience the experience I had with my grandfather. I wish I could do that now.
Yeah.
You know, being older, wiser. I'd like to think wiser. You know, but yeah, it was just a really cool time in my early 20s to be able to share those moments with my grandfather and my uncle, you know, when he was available, because the man travels all over the world and is all over the place. But, you know, being able to share that time with my grandfather was really, really special, and I'm grateful. And that's actually why I chose to smoke this puppy today, the Casa Cuba, because it was one of, if not the last cigar that my grandfather, this was his recipe, this blend. Again, I think I mentioned this earlier, the cigar industry and the food industry, there's a lot of parallels. This blend, I also refer to it as Abuelo's recipe, because this was all my grandfather. And the Casa Cuba, we actually bought the name / the trademark in the early 70s. But we actually didn't, my uncle and my grandfather, you know, were like, we want to do something special with the Casa Cuba later. We just don't know what it is.
They just held on to it.
They just held on to it. Again, early 70s. And this took, I mean, my grandfather, you know, before he passed, he decided this is going to be like to his palate. He was going to make this recipe, this blend to his palate, and do it like the old school Cuban way. Yeah. And that's why it became Casa Cuba. And it just made, every time I smoke this, there's many cigars in Fuente, also JC Newman, that I love to smoke. And to be honest, I really don't smoke anything outside of our cigars.
We don't either.
No disrespect to any other brand, because I mean, there's some wonderful cigars out there.
There's just so much variety.
It's just so much variety that you really don't need to, you know, go outside of that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned. But for me, the Casa Cuba, like, I love smoking this because it makes me feel closer to my grandfather, because it's the last thing that he had hands on, and it was all him. He didn't even really talk to my uncle about it. Yeah, it was like he knew that this is what he wanted to do, and this was he built it to be appropriate for his palate and be appetizing to his palate. And
it's an awesome cigar.
I love it. It's so my good. Favorite. When you asked me, you're like, what do you want to smoke? I was like, Casa Cuba all day.
Yeah. And I love the ring gauge too.
Oh my gosh. It's a very nice ring. It's not too big, but it's not too small. It's like, for me, it's perfect.
I feel like it's so much more elegant.
For ladies,
yes. It's like the perfect size.
I agree with that too, as far as like elegant. I feel like super, you know, just the ring gauge on this is perfect. And it does make me feel like, you know, classy.
Yeah.
Monica's first cigar story is probably one of my favorites.
Let's hear it.
Mostly just because I abandoned her a little bit and didn't realize it, and so it just makes me laugh about how like oblivious you can be to things. Sometimes it was a good lesson for me.
Oh yeah. Oh, oblivion. I know that too
well. It was a couple weeks after I started. I'd never smoked before. I started the job, and
you had never smoked before.
I had never smoked before
at all. Wow.
No, I mean, I started 1 year out of college, so I was like 20.
She didn't have a cigar factory to walk around in when she was growing up.
I didn't grow up in the Dominican. Puffing on my grandpa's cigars.
Touche. I agree. Yeah.
So I never smoked, and you know our foundation donors in Chicago, that group?
Yes, of course.
So it was.
Of course, we've done dinners with them. Oh yeah, definitely.
So I started in May, and then in June we went up to Chicago for one of the events with that group, and we were talking. I can't remember if you were there or not. It was your mom and Liana.
Was it for the cigar BQ thing?
No, it was.
No, we might have been there for cigar BQ,
that was a thing, right?
And I think we just had dinner with the guys.
Okay.
And we ate at Chicago Cut, and we were outside.
Oh yes.
And they put a table
so
way down the riverfront.
I was definitely there.
Okay.
So that was the first time you spoke.
Yes.
Oh my God, keep on with the story.
I was brand new.
So you were oblivious too, so I feel better.
Of course.
Which I'm happy about that now that I didn't make a scene of myself. But it was after like a beautiful dinner. Great wine.
Lots of wine.
Oh yeah.
And
it was a long day, you know, with the cigar BQ and just, you know,
right.
And those guys can hang.
Yeah,
they're no joke over there.
So it's after all that, then they break out the cigars. I think your mom had brought a bunch of cigars, and they start passing them out. And someone hands me Between the Lines, which is what I'm smoking today. You can't tell because I smoked the heck out of it, but so I see everyone, you know, they're taking the cigar out of the cellophane, and I'm like starting to panic. I'm like, what do I do?
Because you didn't want to ask, like, how do I do this?
No, because it was like, that was not it would have been like everyone, you know, focus on me. I just didn't want that. So I'm just trying to like,
I don't blame you.
So I'm just trying to like observe, and I'm like giving Kara like the helping eyes.
I was a few glasses of wine in. I didn't see anything.
She's not helping me.
She was like, "Oh, hey, girl."
You look good,
like,
you good?
yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out like which side to cut and which side to light, and then I mean like between the lines, it's hard anyways to tell because
Right.
it has the
For
tapered
sure.
foot.
You're right.
So I guess I
Oh,
got
I know.
through it.
She got through it.
I don't remember the specifics of it.
It was sink or
but-
swim. That's how we ride around here.
Yeah. So that was
And she swam.
my first cigar experience. You guys are both part of it without even knowing.
Well, good for you, and you lit it the
Yeah.
right way and everything.
I don't know.
We
I
definitely
don't
would. I
know to
feel like
this
we
day.
definitely would have noticed had you lit it the wrong way.
True.
That is when we all would have been like,
Yeah.
and then that would have been really embarrassing.
But you know what? It happens to the best of us.
It
And
does.
even if it did happen to you, I would not judge you for a second.
I know.
Yeah.
Because funny story, and hopefully my family doesn't like kill me for sharing this, but we're all being open and natural here today, and we're all friends, right? But it was New Year's Eve, and my mom had a little party at the house. Okay, and to earlier before we got rolling, we were talking about like how my family throws parties and stuff. So this was like we had people over, and it was New Year's Eve, and everybody was drinking, and my grandfather and grandmother came by, and they of course left kind of early, but they were there. Early for them is like just before midnight, right? So it's like, so they were there, through it all. And I had, to your point earlier, you said you were a couple of glasses of wine in. I was a lot of something in. I mean, it was a combination of wine, probably shots, okay? And so we're sitting outside, and we're all passing around cigars. And I was just kind of like, and I lit the cigar backwards in front of my grandfather, and I started smoking it. Yeah. And he laughed so hard. He couldn't even get upset or embarrassed because he was
Did you
like,
even know what he was
"Esta
laughing at?"
nena." No, at first I didn't. And then like my mother goes, "Ay, Christina." Like just kind of like, "Ay, Christina." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "What's wrong?" And she was like, I was like, "Oh my God." And my grandfather just sitting there laughing, like dying. And that just goes to show like he could have been like, "I what an embarrassment."
Yeah.
But he was just the kind of man that he just wanted to see his family happy and just having a good time. And like, this life is so short, as we know, that, he just laughed it off and was like, but looking back, I'm like, oh my God. Like, and the Latin culture would say, "Que pena," like, "Ay, what a shame." Like, because it's like, so I give you major props, whether you lit it the right way or not, like you handled that like a champ.
And I was like, who invited this girl?
Yeah. That is funny. Oh, I love that story.
Yeah.
I never
So
knew
that's
that.
my first cigar story, and like what a cigar to start with, right?
What a cigar to start with,
Yeah.
actually. That's another one of my favorites. My mom and I love smoking the between the lines
Yeah.
together.
That's like your mom's signature.
It is, yes.
Cigar.
There's a lot. My mom has like a fair share of her favorites, but she's always associated with that cigar because I think that was probably like one of her first like cigars that like kind of represented her a little bit.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, she smokes everything. But she, of course, her and I always stick, like, we love smoking that together.
It's just so
I mean,
pretty.
there's
It
something
is
about
so
like
pretty,
a
too.
gorgeous woman
Yeah.
confidently smoking this like beautiful, unique cigar. Like it just
For
has
sure.
to stick with people,
Of
like
course.
that image.
And I can appreciate why it did stick for all
Mhm.
these years. Definitely. Yeah, we still really enjoy smoking that together.
You know what I loved about the story you told before about how, you guys moved down and you struggled.
Oh,
And the Dominican, like, I don't think people realize that about your family. I think people like think of, the 90s and beyond Fuentes and how
Yeah,
you guys
like
are
the
just this
boom and-
huge,
yeah.
company. And like, truthfully, when I give tours here and I tell people that we're partners with you, everybody's like, "Oh, Fuente." And I'm like,
Yeah.
of course, like if you're familiar with the cigar industry, you know that name. It's
Sure.
a name that you know, just like people know Cohiba. Even if they know like this much about the cigar industry, there's like a couple of names that they know, and Fuente is one of them.
Right.
And I think people don't realize that you at 33 were part of that struggle, and like you experienced that.
Yeah.
I think they think that it's always been that way for
Especially
you
when they
guys.
hear 4 generations. They're like,
Right.
oh, the first generation
Right.
made
Right.
it, and then,
Right.
that's
100%.
Right.
100%.
not necessarily the case.
And that wasn't the case at all,
Right.
and I have to, give props to, my mom and my dad for picking up and following my grandfather and my
Mhm.
grandmother to pursue this dream of growing the family business and getting us to the next level, because my grandfather knew that that's what it was going to take.
Mhm.
Again, going back to my point earlier, he followed his dream, and, we picked up and moved, and my sister was like barely a year old, and I
Mhm.
was 3, and my brother wasn't even born yet. And it was just, that's all we knew, you know? And, it's funny, I had dinner with my dad last night. We were talking about this with, with my husband. We were kind of just reminiscing a little bit and talking about, today and everything. And he was like, yeah, people just assume that, the family business has always been successful, but,
Right.
They don't know about the days where the five of us lived in one room at your grandfather's house. And, we would take cold showers, and if we wanted hot water, we'd have to put water into like a sauce, like a pot, and heat it over the stove, and then literally ladle the hot water on us.
Wow.
People don't realize that, and that's not something that I feel like I need to share, but I'm open to sharing it, like in an environment like this. It comes up in conversation because I'm proud of that, of that part of my life, because I feel like it was very humbling, and the blessings that we have now have just really all stemmed from that, and it makes me that much more appreciative, because I saw my family struggle and try to like not try, but just make sure that we were successful and we got to the next level. And my grandfather was relentless, like he was such a hard worker. I mean, he would wake up so early to make sure that he could take us to school. Like that was like such a big thing for him, was to take us to school in the Dominican. And then he'd go and, bust ass all day in the factory. And then a lot of the times he'd pick us up from school, and like such a family man, and like he's told Rich, good old Rich Dolak, he and I had a conversation recently too, and he told Rich that those were some of, if not the best times of his life, being able to take his grandkids to school and like be a part of their lives in that way, our lives in that way.
I feel like I've heard your mom say that too, that
yeah,
the Dominican are some of the best memories she has.
Undoubtedly. My mom says it all the time. She misses the Dominican. I mean, of course, she goes there as often as she can, to be in the factory and meetings and all of the above, but to live there. She says she misses the days of living there. And even, living there now wouldn't be the same, of course.
Because it was like those moments.
Those moments and those times, that really kind of like helped build not only the family business, but build the family, So for me, it's just, I'm just grateful for those humbling moments, because man, they brought us here today.
Right. And I think that's why when people interact with your family, they feel like you're genuinely happy to talk to them and meet them, and you appreciate them smoking your brands, because
that's
you
truth,
are
though.
like
really
you are,
like
and
we really are, because it's we're grateful that my family has been in business for over 100 years, and we're just so grateful that people still want to smoke the product that we're not changing. Like again, going back to kind of correlating the cigar business and the food business, it's like we've built our brand on the finest ingredients. And when you're trying to build a good meal and you really want to build it and set yourself up for a successful meal, you can't cut corners. And that's another thing that my family and the business, we do not cut corners. And that's something that I've respected. My grandfather could have cut corners to get product out faster, but he never did, because it was more about the taste and the quality of the product always over the quantity of the product. So, for us, that's something that still lives on today.
Right.
Even after he's passed. I mean, it's been years now, but that legacy and that mentality still lives on. And I just hope and pray, and I know in my heart that it will continue to live on through all of us, for sure.
So to Kara's point about how the Fuente name is such a big name in the cigar industry, from someone inside, for someone outside, we can kind of guess as to why that is, or see from our perspective, but from someone inside the family, why do you think it is that the Fuente name has become such a big name in the industry?
I believe it's, for many reasons, honestly, but I would say the main reason is because we build our product for taste, not for quantity. And we basically, I remember my grandfather always saying, like, we want you to smoke one of our cigars, be done with it, and want to pick up and smoke another, And that, to me, it always stuck in the back of my mind, like, you know what? You're working towards that feeling, that sense of like, okay, I just finished, whoever the consumer is, I just finished smoking a Fuente, and I'm done with it, but I want to pick up and smoke another.
It's like a great meal.
It's
like you want one more bite.
Right. Like you want one more bite. Exactly. And so for me, that's always been the thing that stuck out the most, is that my grandfather, my uncle, my mom, the family has always worked towards the same value, the same bottom line, that we do not cut corners, And yes, I get it. You need the product faster, and I want to give you the product faster, but we don't, slogan, never rush the hands of time, right? And my family genuinely lives by that. Like since day one, all the way till now, 100 plus years later, we still stand by that. And that is why when you smoke a Fuente, you know what you're getting. And I can't say that every cigar is perfect because, they're hand rolled. Right. And in the Dominican, I always compare, it's funny, again, another thing I was talking to Rich Dolek about recently, the factory in the Dominican, the different factories are like one big restaurant, right? And you have so many different moving parts. Like in a restaurant, there's so many different moving parts of different stations, all of the above. But you need to work cohesively together to make one good product, right? Of course, it's thousands and thousands of cigars, but your bottom line is to make that cigar exactly how it should be every single time. So for me, again, amongst many reasons, and I know we don't have all day to go through it all, but I would say that's the one thing is that we abide by the same standard, that we do not rush the hands of time, and the recipes, the blends are built the way they are for a reason, and the business has come this far for a reason, and we stand by what we know. And that, I hope, answers your question.
Yeah, it definitely does. From my perspective, I definitely see that, but I also see it as you guys, like you and your mom and your uncle and Liana. When you guys interact with people, it's so genuine, and you make them feel so special, and like you remember who they are in your prior conversations. You just make everyone feel like they're part of the family.
I appreciate you saying that.
And I think that
but
that
it's
has
true.
gone a long way in the people really appreciating your family.
I appreciate you saying that. And I think it's also just, we act that way and we respond that way because we're just so grateful that, again, after all the years of being in business, that people still want to smoke our product and be a part of it in that way. So it's, for me, it's so humbling just to hear people talk so highly of the cigars they're smoking, or of a family member, or my family in general. It's just, for me, it means so much, and I'm grateful for every conversation. I really am, and some people will come to me and be like, do you remember me last year we talked about, and I go, I'm always very honest. I'm like, I remember your face. Yeah. Let's get back to that conversation, because you see, and you associate with so many different people. And I love that, though. That's why I love going to the trade show in Vegas, because you're just like, there's tons of people that just want to, to talk to you and just express to you how much they're enjoying smoking your product. And it just makes me feel like super grateful and just humbled by it all. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
this was
you.
so fun.
This was actually super fun. Thank you guys for having me again.
It was.
Thank you.
Loved it. Definitely have to not go years without seeing you in person again.
No, it's definitely not.
Shameful how long it's been since we've actually gotten together.
It is a little shameful. Yes.
Let's cheers to see each other.
Amen. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you again for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you.